How's it going, guys? I am Fulcrman, your local brick historian, with another episode of Brick Built History. Today we're looking not at an aircraft this time, but at a piece of armor. We are looking at the Jagdpanther. Now, the Jagdpanther is what's known as the tank destroyer version of the Panther. Now, the way that the Germans would do things is a little different from how other countries would do it. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the kit itself, because this Brickmania kit is pretty cool. So the first thing is looking at the box. Now, as you can see, you got Jagdpanther Tank Destroyer by Andrew Summers, who unfortunately doesn't work there anymore. But the dude was really good with making these cool tanks. Like the way you get the angles in here, it's really cool. Speaking of which, this picture is really cool with the 3/4 profile shot that they do all the time with their colored image in the front here. You really get a good look at this ambush camouflage that's in here. And it's got this information here on the side. I like their large boxes where it's got this part on the side here. Skill 4 out of 5, 719 Lego and Brickmania elements with a Jagdpanther commander. The legal stuff on this side, Jagdpanther tank destroyer, so it doesn't have a manufacturing plate. Number 205, and then you get a sweet action shot in the back here. So it looks like it just fired. You have a shell coming out here. It's showing the disperse of the muzzle brake, and then a quick little mention of the kit, like designed to capture the unique shape of the Jagdpanther. Comes with many standard features: opening hatch, rolling suspension, exhaust, muzzle brake, all that. But let's move this to the side. Take a look, my water bottle fell, at the actual kit. So let's start with the minifigure this time, because this 44 dot camouflage is really cool. I have no idea how Lando got this to work, but it's just throughout the entire thing. I'm honestly blown away. Like, it just looks so cool. But move him to the side and take a look at the brick built camouflage of the Jagdpanther itself. Like, the way you're able to get this green to actually mix in like that, like all these side colors and all that, it's really cool, really cool. I do enjoy it, especially going into the wheels as well, like, which they do move, all that. Where did it begin? I guess start from the front here. So we have a 88mm gun, which pivots up and down. Because it's the tank destroyer, the way that Germans do this, it doesn't have a turret. It has what's called this casemate. So the gun technically has some traverse, but it basically goes up and down, and you use the actual vehicle to aim side to side. So it would spin on its tracks like this to aim, which is why these are used in defense positions, because it will like sit here and wait for a tank to drive by, and then boom. the angles here of this casemate and the glacis plate, the way that they did it with the Panther, it is difficult to get right. And just the way this works, going up here and going back while also having the side like this, that is absolutely outstanding. Like, the angles of a Panther and the Jagdpanther are really difficult to catch. The side skirt here kind of protects the wheels here, which is kind of weird how this is stationary. This front wheel here is stationary, and the track kind of goes around it, mostly because this would be the drive wheel on the actual vehicle itself, which the Germans always had. I think, yeah, every single time they had a forward drive wheel, except for maybe a few. On the back here, it angles back up like that, so that's a nice attention to detail. You have the exhaust here, the printed fans here, they kind of move around a little bit because it's a one stud connection, so you kind of have to make sure that it's in the right spot. And you get the stickers here. These are prints, these are printed. Sticker Balkenkreuz. And then you have a printed puffy print of a MG34. And then the top comes off, and you have the breech, which opens, so you can put your shell in there if you want. And it moves up and down with the gun. There's a bit of interior, kinda. You can kind of make your own in there. Yeah. You have your extra tracks here hanging off the side. So this took maybe a few hours to make. It's not the easiest, hence why it's a 4 out of 5, but it's not the most difficult I've done. I think the most difficult for me so far is my F-35, but this is still a fun build. There are a few things. It is kind of more fragile than your typical Brickmania tank because of the way it's built. Especially like on the side here, it can be a little finicky. This top part likes to move around a lot. The glacis plate likes to move, so just got to be aware of that. If you grab onto here, this piece will fall off a lot. But other than that, also the tracks like to hang off like this, off the wheels, because of how loose they are. But if you want to make it like a little less accurate, you can probably take off one of these links and make it tighter so that it stays on there. But if you're rolling it around, which kind of have to hold it like that to make it roll. But if you're rolling around like on a carpet, it's fine. Like if you have some pressure on it. So overall, I'm really impressed with how, almost forgot about the hatch. That's the only opening hatch, so might as well show it off. Now I can do my overall impression. But my overall impression is, it is a really, really cool, it's just really cool to look at. Seeing the tiny details from the back of the engine deck to that cool blueprints for the hatches to the gun moving in the breech inside, like, and just the absolute angles, the ability to catch the angles. That's what really got me into this. So, yeah, I did also buy a regular Panther, so I can't wait to put these two next to each other, the Jagdpanther and the Panther, to get a true comparison between the two. But yeah, besides that, it's a little more expensive. I doubt Brickmania might bring it back again, because whenever I bought this, it was like the restock of the restock of the restock. So they're probably done with this, I'm guessing, for now, like until someone makes a new one. But yeah, it's way more advanced than the other two aircraft you've seen, the 109 and the Newport. This is way more advanced than that, so you're definitely going to want some more advanced Lego building, a few more years of experience to really tackle this one, because like the way that these sidewalls connect is really difficult to get, because you have to get it like connected at a certain angle at a certain point, and if you mess up, then you're gonna break a bunch of stuff. So yeah, take some patience, takes some experience. But other than that, let's go into the history of the Jagdpanther. So the Jagdpanther is the tank destroyer version of the Panther. The Panther being the Panzerkampfwagen 5, which basically it's the 5th model Panzer. It was brought about as basically kind of a copy of the T-34 with its angled armor, with a bigger gun than what the Panzer III would have, and then I think it might have the same gun as the Panzer IV, also F2. Might be the same, I'm not sure, but it basically had a 75mm gun in the turret. So the Panther would be rushed into production, and at first would be not liked with mechanical problems, and then it would get better. But I'll get into the normal Panther later. But basically, they decided to use the chassis of the Panther to make the Jagdpanther, because of the way that the Germans would make their tank destroyers is that they want a bigger gun on their tank chassis. But in order to put, say, an 88mm onto a Panther, it would require a complete redesign of the turret and redesigning a lot of things, and it takes a lot of time. So they would make a turretless version where they would have the main chassis the same, and they would put a casemate. Oh, see what I mean with this little thing? They would put a casemate on top of the chassis with a glacis plate in the front and the bigger gun sticking out. And they would do this all the time. They would do this with the Stuka 3, with the Sturmgeschütz. They would do this with the Jagdpanzer 4. They would do it with the Jagdtiger. Like, it's just the common thing they would do, is if they wanted a bigger gun on it, one of their tanks, they would take a known chassis, put a casemate on it, and put the bigger gun on it. Yes, you sacrifice having a turret to easily traverse and shoot, but it wasn't really seen as necessary, because most of the time these would be in a defense position. So the Jagdpanther is actually the 3rd attempt at putting an 88mm cannon on a tank destroyer. The first one was, or the first two, one of them was the fronted end, which the Ferdinand was a absolute dumpster fire of a self-propelled gun, tank destroyer, whatever you call it. And then there was the Nashorn, which was basically the same gun on a Panzer IV chassis, which was severely underpowered and under-armored because they couldn't really fit this gun on a Panzer IV chassis. And so they have the Panther. Okay, well, let's try it on this. And it relatively worked. So this is an 88mm Pak 43/3 L71. The way that the Germans did it was the L was like the length of the barrel compared to the size of the shell. So the L71 was like 71 times the length. And you would see this with all their cannons. It would be like whatever millimeter, Pak, whatever, L, whatever. So the length is the L. And that would, like, the higher the length, usually the higher velocity, which is why the L71 here is good for tank destruction, because it's a higher velocity, which is more likely to penetrate armor. This is also the same gun that would be used in the Tiger II. This would be introduced in 1944, January 1944, so it would mostly spend its time in the Eastern Front. It would be on the Western Front a little bit. The British and Americans didn't really see a lot of the Generation 3 tanks, or its constituents, like the Panthers and the Tigers, and their tank destroyer versions were not really seen too much. More Panthers were sent to the Western Front than Tigers, so there is that. But these were not really seen on the Western Front too much. But only 415 of them were built, which is not a lot when you take it into the grand scheme of like how many T-34s were built, how many M18 Hellcats were built, like compared to this thing. So this was not a very well produced vehicle because it was developed late, introduced late, and they really just didn't have enough time to make a lot of Jagdpanthers. Now, the Jagdpanther would be crewed by a 5-man crew. You have to have a driver on this side here, which this is his little viewing port for driving. You have the radio operator / machine gunner, which this is a MG34, and because it's virtually impossible to get this angle with these pieces and have an actual ball turret, that suffices. You can't really blame them. Then you have a commander, which this would be like his commander's hatch right here. Now, unlike the other tanks, he kind of just sits there. So whenever you have your commander here, I would suggest putting like some bricks down in here for him to stand on so he doesn't look like he's falling out. And then there would be the gunner, which is one of these two hatches, and the loader would be on the other side. I'm not exactly sure what the dynamic would be with these, but you know that there's five-man crew. So made in 1944, and this would serve the German army until 1945, obviously since the end of the war. But the thing that people don't know is the French would actually take German tanks and armor and use it for themselves until like the 60s, including the Jagdpanther. The Jagdpanther would be used in French service until like either early or mid 1960s. And the same thing with the Panther. And it was basically, they just liked, it was a combination of kind of liking the way that these were done, like these were made, and the fact that their entire armor division, like all their armor divisions, were just completely smacked by the Germans, and they haven't been able to produce their own tanks throughout the entire war, so they have to rebuild. And these were available because guess what? Germany lost. So France was able to snag some of their armor. But in the end, the Jagdpanther, it's one of those German tank destroyers. The way that the Germans made their tank destroyers, it's very unique. It's very unique how you have like the chassis of the tank, and then you just slap a casemate and a turretless cannon on it that's bigger, and then make the tank destroyer version of it. It's a very interesting and unique system that Germany made, and it's not that bad, and it's not exactly completely unique because the Soviets would do the same thing too. So it's not like a bad system, it's just a different system. But the Jagdpanther was, well, it was kind of just another late war big cat Generation 3 piece of German armor that would be plagued by a lot of the same issues that the Panther would have, especially the final drive, going 150 kilometers before it crapped out. But it would just be another German tank or tank destroyer that has kind of been a little too late, or probably even too much too late, because of how massive these tanks can be. Even though I believe the Panther is a medium tank to Germany, but it's not to us. But without a doubt, a very, very cool model here, especially with this ambush camouflage. All these angles eloquently captured with a bunch of different techniques for each angle. So, Andrew Summers did a really good job, and I'm excited to get the Panther to compare these two, put them side by side. But anyway, I've done enough rambling. So if you liked the video, hit a like. If you learned something or want to learn something a little more, you can ask in the comments or tell me in the comments. But I just mainly want you to be interested in going into some research into this to find out yourself, oh, this thing is really cool, or it's not as cool as I thought it was, or whatever. If you want to see more of these, again, I have a lot of them to build, so I'm not going to be bored anytime soon. So if you want to see a whole lot more of these, there's going to be a lot of them. Go ahead and subscribe if you want. Tell your friends if you think that they're interested in Legos, and if they're interested in history, well, they'd be interested in this. So go ahead and do that if you want as well. With that said, I have been Falkerman. This has been Brick Built History, and let's continue to build history.